Namaste, aloha, and welcome again to another Krishna book reading. I am Janapati Das, and I've been doing these readings from the Krishna book, translated and purported upon by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I'd like to thank for all of your comments on my past videos I've done and the questions that you've asked, and thank you again to Greg for suggesting I use a microphone, testing that out for tonight, so hopefully you can hear better tonight. And we're going to start off with some kirtan, some hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, so please join along. I'd like to offer my respects to my spiritual teacher. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Sira Varupananda Amahamsa Ichinamane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Sira Swarupananda Paramahamsa Ichinamane Hari Bodhita Gora Jai Gora Haribo. Okay. So, it's been a week or maybe more. Excuse me. So we are going to continue with reading from our Krishna book. And we are actually on a new chapter. And hopefully we'll make it. My battery's dying on my Kindle, but we'll hopefully be able to get through it. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We had been reading the last chapter that, if you remember from the previous video, was the extinguishing the forest fire. And so, of course, Krishna was with his friends, and there was a fire, and the friends and cows got caught in the fire, or around the fire, I guess you'd say, inside the fire. And Krishna, they calling out to Krishna, and all the cows were mooing and calling out, and Krishna basically sucked up the fire, saved everybody. So we just continue now with killing the demon Pralambasura. After extinguishing the devastating fire, Krishna, surrounded by his relatives, friends, cows, calves, and bulls, and glorified by their singing, again entered Vrindavan, which is always full of cows. While Krishna and Balaram were enjoying life in Vrindavan, in the midst of the cowherd boys and girls, the season gradually changed to summer. The summer season in India is not very much welcomed because of the excessive heat, but in Vrindavan everyone was pleased because summer there appeared just like spring. This was possible only because Lord Krishna and Balaram, who are the controllers even of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, were residing there. In Vrindavan there are many falls which are always pouring water, and the sound is so sweet that it covers the sound of the crickets. And because water flows all over, the forest always looks very green and beautiful. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were never disturbed by the scorching heat of the sun or the high summer temperatures. The lakes of Vrindavan are surrounded by green grasses, and various kinds of lotus flowers bloom there, such as the Kalahara, Kanjotpala, and the air blowing in Vrindavan carries the aromatic pollen of those lotus flowers. When the particles of water from the waves of the Jamuna, the lakes, and the waterfalls touched the bodies of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they automatically felt a cooling effect. Therefore, they were practically undisturbed by the summer season. Vrindavan is such a nice place. Flowers are always blooming, and there are even various kinds of decorated deer. Birds are chirping, peacocks are crowing and dancing, and bees are humming. The cuckoos there sing nicely in 5 kinds of tunes. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, blowing his flute, accompanied by his elder brother Balaram, and other cowherd boys and cows, entered the beautiful forest of Vrindavan to enjoy the atmosphere. They walked into the midst of the newly grown leaves of trees whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, and sometimes wrestling with one another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang, and others played on flutes. Some bugled on buffalo horns or clapped their hands, praising Krishna. "Dear brother, you are dancing very nicely." Actually, all these boys were demigods descended from the higher planets to assist Krishna in his pastimes. The demigods, garbled in the dress of the cowherd boys, were encouraging Krishna in his dancing, just as one artist encourages another with praise. Up to that time, neither Balaram nor Krishna had undergone the hair-cutting ceremony. Therefore, their hair was clustered like crow's feathers. They were always playing hide-and-seek with their boyfriends, or jumping or fighting with one another. Sometimes, while his friends were chanting and dancing, Krishna would praise them. "My dear friends, you are dancing and singing very nicely." The boys played at catching ball with bell-shaped fruits and round amaliki. They played blind man's buff, challenging and touching one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and various kinds of birds. They joked with one another by imitating croaking frogs, and they enjoyed swinging underneath the trees. Sometimes they would play like a king and his subjects amongst themselves. In this way, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, played all kinds of sports and enjoyed the soothing atmosphere of Vrindavan, full of rivers, lakes, rivulets, fine trees, and excellent fruits or flowers. Once, while they were engaged in their transcendental pastimes, a great demon of the name Pralambasura entered their company, desiring to kidnap both Balaram and Krishna. Although Krishna was playing the part of the cowherd boy as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could understand everything, past, present, and future. It's the meaning of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows everything. So when Pralambasura entered their company, Krishna began to think of how to kill the demon, but externally he received him as a friend. "Oh, my dear friend," he said, "it is very good that you have come to take part in our pastimes." Krishna then called all his friends and ordered them, "Now we shall play in pairs. We shall challenge one another in pairs." With this proposal, all the boys assembled together. Some of them took the side of Krishna, and some of them took the side of Balaram, and they arranged to play in duel. The defeated members in duel fighting had to carry the victorious members on their backs. They began playing and at the same time tended the cows as they proceeded through the Bandravana forest. The party of Balaram, accompanied by Sridama and Rishabha, came out victorious as the friends of Krishna's. And Krishna's party had to carry them on their backs through the Bandravana forest. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, being defeated, had to carry Sridama on his back, and Bhadrasena carried Rishabha. Imitating their play, Pralambasura, who appeared there as a cowherd boy, carried Balaram on his back. Pralambasura was the greatest of the demons, and he had calculated that Krishna was the most powerful of the cowherd boys. In order to avoid the company of Krishna, Pralambasura carried Balaram far away. The demon was undoubtedly very strong and powerful, but he was carrying Balaram, who is compared with a mountain. Therefore he began to feel the burden, and thus he assumed his real form. When he appeared in his real feature, he was decorated with a golden helmet and earrings, and looked just like a cloud with lightning carrying the moon. Balaram observed the demon's body expanding up to the limits of the clouds, his eyes dazzling like blazing fire, and his mouth flashing with sharpened teeth. At first Balaram was surprised by the demon's appearance, and he began to wonder, how is it that all of a sudden this carrier has changed in every way? But with a clear mind he could quickly understand that he was being carried away from his friends by a demon who intended to kill him. Immediately he struck the head of the demon with his strong fist, just as the king of the heavenly planet strikes a mountain with a thunderbolt. Being stricken by the fist of Balaram, the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with a smashed head, and blood poured from his mouth. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound, and it sounded as if a great hill were falling upon being struck by the thunderbolt of King Indra. All the boys then rushed to the spot. Being astonished by the ghastly scene, they began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done." All of them began to embrace Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death, and they offered their blessings and congratulations. All the demigods in the heavenly planets became very satisfied and showered flour on the transcendental body of Balaram, and they also offered their blessings and congratulations for his having killed the great demon Pralambasura. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the 18th chapter of Krishna, killing the demon Pralambasura. So my Kindle is about to die, but I think I just get a little bit into the next story here, which is another forest fire. There are fires, and Krishna takes care of them. This is called Devouring the Forest Fire. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were engaged in the pastimes described above, the cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own, entering farther and farther into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grasses. The goats, cows, and buffalo traveled from one forest to another and entered the forest known as Ishikatavi. This forest was full of green grass, and therefore they were allured. But when they entered, they saw that there was a forest fire, and they began to cry. On the other side, Balaram and Krishna, with their friends, could not find their animals, and they became very aggrieved. They began to trace the cows by following the footprints as well as the path of eaten grass. All the boys were fearing that their very means of livelihood, the cows, were now lost. Soon, however, they heard the crying of their cows. Krishna began to call the cows by their respective names with great noise. Upon hearing Krishna calling, the cows immediately replied with joy. But by this time the forest fires surrounded all of them, and the situation appeared to be very fearful. The flames increased as the wind blew very quickly, and it appeared that everything movable and immovable would be devoured. All the cows and the boys became very frightened, and they looked toward Balaram the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I always love that line, because this kind of analogy is very, I shouldn't say it's an analogy because it's a really history, but you can use the analogy as a material world, or our world as a forest fire that we're caught in. All one has to do is cry out to Krishna, and Krishna is there. Krishna is always with us. But the fearful and tragic and dangerous situation that we face is from our own enviousness and desire to be the Lord and controller. We find very quickly that it's not very fun after all. It's like being in a forest fire. So we turn, and this is another great analogy here, is that the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If a person is about to leave their body, it's a very fearful situation. It's scary. Especially if you don't know anything about Krishna, or you don't know anything about God in general, or you're an atheist. It's fearful. It's very fearful. But when you see Krishna, it's almost like you are you're taking complete shelter. Please, dear Lord Krishna, please protect us. And this is what the devotees here in Vrindavan are doing. And there's also another really wonderful story. I'm just going to probably, because, maybe I can get through the rest. Let me read the rest of this chapter first because it's short. All the cows, so they said, Dear Krishna and Balaram, we are now burning from the heat of this blazing fire, just like life. Let us take shelter of your lotus feet. We know you can protect us from this great danger. Our dear friend Krishna, we are your intimate friends. It is not right that we should suffer in this way. We are all completely dependent upon you, and you are the knower of all religious life. We do not know anyone except you. The personality of Godhead heard the appealing voices of his friends, and casting a pleasing glance over them, he began to answer. By speaking through his eyes, which is Krishna can do anything he wants with any of his senses, he impressed his friends that there was no cause for fear. Then Krishna, the supreme mystic, the powerful personality of Godhead, immediately swallowed up the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from imminent danger. Out of fear, the boys were almost unconscious, but when they regained their consciousness and opened their eyes, they saw that they were again in the forest with Krishna, Balaram, and the cows. They were astonished to see that they were completely free from the attack of the blazing fire, and the cows were saved. They secretly thought that Krishna must not be an ordinary boy, but some demigod. In the evening, Krishna and Balaram, along with the boys and cows, returned to Vrindavan, playing their flutes. And as they approached the village, all the gopis became very joyous. Throughout the day, the gopis used to think of Krishna while he was in the forest, and in his absence, they were considering one moment to be like 12 years. So there's a very wonderful prayer also by Lord Chaitanya Prabhu. It says one moment seems like 12 years, the separation from Krishna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 19th chapter of Krishna devouring the forest fire. So we got through that, and we'll have a nice story next about the description of Adam. And that's a very wonderful story as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about a story. Hopefully I tell it correctly, but there was once this has to do with this needs to completely surrender and completely depend 100% on the Supreme Lord in every case. So there was a yogi who was very well apt in his mystic abilities and abilities to have mystic powers, And he was very proud of that. And so he liked to kind of show, but he couldn't really find anyone really to show his mystic powers, to show off his mystic powers. So one day he saw this man, this saintly kind of person walking around, kind of, he had beads, and he was just in his own world, and he would come by, and the yogi would be like, "Oh, hey, excuse me, sir, excuse me," and the saint would pass by, not even noticing him, and he was like, "Huh." So then he would keep trying to get the he could see that this person was not affected by anything, but just looked very serene and very happy, and he was just in his meditation. And every time he tried to stop him, he would just wander by him, not even noticing. And the yogi was getting exasperated. He was like, "Oh, I have to find out what it is that, what it is that he's doing that makes him so like he is." And so finally he stops him. He says, "Sir, please tell me what it is that you're doing. Tell me what it is. Why is it that you're so peaceful and so absorbed in thought and happy? And I really need to know. Please." He's begging him to tell him. And so then the saint suddenly seized his hair, grabbed him, dragged him over to the river, and stuck his face in the water, the yogi in the water. So the yogi, of course, was not quite prepared for that. He had some mystic abilities, but he was kind of shocked by that. And he was just being stuck underwater, and he just at the point of almost dying, almost drowning to death. And then the saint pulled his head up, and the yogi like that. And the saint said, "When you have love for Krishna and a desire to surrender your life and have complete, had the same value that you had for that life of your heir, to have love for Krishna, then you will be able to achieve perfection." So this is a nice story in the sense that all the residents of Vrindavan had also, they knew nothing but Krishna. And even in every situation, even though despite the fact that they would kid with them and pretend, think, in their mind, "Oh, Krishna's, we got to take care of Krishna because he's kind of, small." And they knew that in the end, in the situation, there was no other shelter. There was no other shelter. So they would always take shelter in this forest fire. And when there were demons, we had the story of Govardhan Hill, also always took shelter of Krishna. Just 100% took shelter of Krishna and had, and Krishna just protected them at all times. So in this situation, we need to also learn to cultivate our spiritual life, cultivate our love for Krishna, and cultivate our surrender to our spiritual master and to Krishna. Because life in the material world is brutal, and especially at the time of death, there is no protection. No matter what you have in your life, no matter what you achieve or what kind of perfection or what kind of beauty you have, what kind of talents you have, those things just fade away, and you're faced with an emptiness and death ultimately, and facing death. So that's a very important thing to meditate upon every day, is to learn to take shelter of Krishna, not in your own abilities or capabilities, but any capabilities or talents that you have, you offer and surrender to Krishna, because it's from him that all these great things come. So that is all for today. We're going to chant a little bit, and we'll see how the microphone sound turned out. Thank you very much. Haribol, aloha. See you next time.